Hello, subscribers. Time to review more animes. I've got two today, one good and another mid. Let's start with the mid anime, No Longer Allowed in Another World. This one starts out promising with some good jokes about a man trying to commit suicide by jumping in a river, only to be run over by a truck, and poking fun at isekai tropes, by then telling us that the truck was some sort of spirit or whatever sent to collect him to bring him into the other world. Unfortunately, it doesn't really get funnier than that. The start makes you think you're in for a silly comedy that doesn't take itself too seriously, but it seems more like a generic isekai with some unique features sprinkled in to try and make you think it's interesting. I think it's one of those shows where the premise was better than the execution. Before I go over the biggest problem with this anime, let's look at how safe the anime is. Sexuality is there, but not overemphasized. The main character has no interest in anything of that nature. So it ends up being tamer than the ladies are drawn. There is one lady in 1 or 2 episodes who is over-sexualized, but that one does at least work with the theme of not judging a book by its cover, which those episodes were going for. There is no nudity. I'm going off memory, but I'm pretty sure there was no homosexuality, even in a joking way. Transsexualism is also a non-issue. There is a tomboy in the group who likes to fight, while her twin brother did not. But it's not like she rejects femininity altogether or anything, so it isn't something to be concerned about. Violence is an obvious yes, and it doesn't really promote violence as the solution, but doesn't reject it as an option either. Most people don't die. I can only think of one named character who actually died. Everyone else is sure to be fine in the end. Gore is a little blood and a little dismemberment, really not much of either. Isaiah 5:20 gets tricky, especially trying to do it by memory. On the plus side, the church is at least portrayed in a good light. But if you watch this show, you might want to go into it with a critical mindset, as some of the philosophy spouted by the main character may be a little sus. But again, I'm just going off memory. I didn't record any of those moments to try and scrutinize them. So they weren't obviously wrong. Maybe it was a case of it being right in those very specific circumstances. But most of the time, in any other circumstances, it would have been bad advice. Like I said, just keep a critical mind while watching, to guard yourself from any bad philosophy that may or may not be present. The magic system is video game logic based on unique skills that otherworlders possess. Nothing to worry about. The language, as far as I remember, is mild, PG, maybe PG-13 at the most. And now on to the biggest problem with No Longer Allowed in Another World. The main character himself is the biggest problem. He's just a walking plot device. And I'm not exaggerating. The anime is even aware of this, as his entourage literally carries him from place to place by dragging his coffin everywhere. And he doesn't even have a real name. Everyone just calls him Sensei. He has no real agency. He is also inconsistent. On the one hand, he doesn't want to get involved with the things going on around him, and he just wants to die. On the other hand, he doesn't really try very hard to die, and seems to help out a lot. A prime example of this is when he had an opportunity to go see a person who would have certainly killed him. But instead, he decides to roam the castle and look for someone's diary so he could use his skill, which he claims to be oblivious of, to help someone else defeat the monster. Again, just showcasing his own lack of agency. And he just goes where the plot needs him to go. I mentioned he's suicidal, but what I couldn't tell you is why. There doesn't seem to be any reason why he would even want to die. He just seems to romanticize the notion of dying, and I would be okay with that, if it at least gave a reason why. What is it about dying that entices him so? And sure, you could argue that it would not be a good idea to romanticize suicide to the audience, but that is a poor excuse if you ask me. First of all, it makes for a bad character if we don't know his motivations. It's like drawing a nude scene and then drawing a black bar over it to censor it. Why not just not draw them nude in the first place? And likewise, if you can't give a compelling reason why he would want to kill himself, then why make him suicidal at all? Second, it would be easy to do since he's a writer. You could just have him give a speech about finding a good end to his own story. Not much risk of anyone thinking the same way, and it would fit with his character. It feels to me that this anime was written to be a silly anime about a man who accidentally saves the world while looking for a place to die, but the writers didn't actually know how to write silly, so it just ends up being another failed premise on a generic isekai. 2 stars, I don't necessarily recommend it, but it is at least watchable. Solo Leveling didn't really impress me when I watched the first season. It was just some power fantasy with video game mechanics and mysterious dungeons that didn't seem to have much hope of ever being explained. But the thing I didn't like the most about the first season was the changes I saw going on with Jinwoo. Being able to level up started changing him both physically and mentally. Now, the physical part made sense, but the mentality shift had me worried. It felt like he was losing his grip on morality and/or empathy, much like Overlord did. Luckily, after seeing Season 2, I can say that all my fears have been put to rest. He still seems to care about other people and has a decent enough moral compass. It's not a perfect moral compass, but it's good enough. Also, we started to get more information about the dungeons and where they came from. It's not much, but it gives hope for a satisfying conclusion in the future. As for how safe it is to watch, it's pretty safe. There is no real sexuality to speak of except maybe Jinwoo getting buff and attracting all the nurses. It's got some violence and gore, but I don't think it gets too crazy with it, but I guess that depends on your own sensibilities. I don't think it switches bad for good anywhere, but Jinwoo is seemingly given his powers by a false god. But it's not like anyone actually worships this false god or anything, so I'm not really counting that. And the language I don't remember, but I would assume it's about page 13. I do think the first season was overrated at the time for what it was, but as it goes on, it does seem to be starting to live up to the hype. I give solo leveling 3.5 stars, because it is still just a power fantasy, where the side characters are only there to showcase how strong Jinwoo is. It could still go either way, but I have high hopes for it.